On Christmas Eve, my mother-in-law stood in my dining room, raised her glass, and announced that my house would be signed over to her daughter by New Year's. Nobody laughed. Nobody told her she was insane. My husband stared at his plate like silence could pass for character. I said the only thing that mattered. This house is in my name. She did not even blink. She said her son paid for everything. I had failed to give the family a boy, and a woman like me should be grateful to stay under their roof at all. Then she pointed at the front door. Snow was blowing across the porch. My coat was still on the hallway hook. My Christmas dinner was still on the table. And that woman told me to get out of the house I bought before I married her son. He said nothing. That should have been the worst part. It was not. The worst part was the cream folder hidden under her purse on the sideboard. The logo on it belonged to Cedar Pines Senior Living. My name was written across the tab. By the next afternoon, she had lost it for good. It was not the snow that kept me awake that night. It was that folder. Cream-colored. Heavy paper. Cedar Pines Senior Living stamped in green across the top. My name on the tab in Judith's handwriting. I had only seen it for a second before she covered it with her purse. But that second changed everything. I knew Cedar Pines. Judith had toured it twice that fall and complained it was too expensive. Daniel said she was only planning ahead. Planning ahead for what? She lived in my house for free. Marcy lived there for free. I paid the mortgage, the heat, the groceries, and every repair. Yet somehow my name was sitting on a senior living file I had never opened. I sat in a hotel parking lot with the engine running and Daniel's texts lighting up my screen. Come back. Mom was upset. You know how she gets. No. I knew exactly how she got. Entitled. And for the first time I was ready to open it. Before I tell you what was inside that folder, tell me where you are watching from tonight. I sat there in that hotel lot staring at my phone and realizing one thing. Some families do not collapse in one loud moment. They collapse when one document finally tells the truth. My name is Elena Brooks. I am 34 years old. I live in Beaverton, Oregon, in a quiet neighborhood just off Murray Boulevard. I work as an office manager at a dental practice, and right now I am telling you this because I learned too late that being useful is not the same thing as being respected. I bought that house 2 years before I married Daniel. Small craftsman. 2 bedrooms. 1 narrow staircase. A fenced yard. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. I made the down payment from savings I built before him. The mortgage came out of my account. The deed carried one name. Mine. Daniel liked that house the way weak men like shelter. He enjoyed it. He relied on it. He let other people act like it belonged to him. His mother, Judith, moved in after a rent increase and called it temporary. His sister, Marcy, came 6 months later after another one of her business ideas collapsed. Temporary stretched into 5 years. 5 Christmases. 5 summers. 5 years of groceries, utilities, repairs, property taxes, and quiet disrespect, all paid by me. Judith never screamed. She was too polished for that. She preferred statements. Calm ones. Final ones. She talked like motherhood was a rank and everyone else should salute. Marcy was different. Restless. Always launching something. Always short on cash. Always one excuse away from needing rescue. And Daniel. Daniel hated conflict more than dishonesty. That is what made him dangerous. Not cruelty. Absence. He let lies sit in the room until they sounded like family truth. That fall, Judith toured senior living communities twice and kept pretending it was research. Daniel brushed it off. Said she liked to plan ahead. I believed him because I was still doing what I always did then. Carrying the cost. Ignoring the pattern. Calling survival peace when it was surrender. There was one more thing Judith never stopped measuring me against. I had not given her a grandson. Not a child. A grandson. In her mind, that made me temporary too. By Christmas Eve, I was done volunteering for my own erasure. Christmas Eve started at 11 that morning with butter, cinnamon, and the lie that I was still trying to make that house feel like home. I cleaned the kitchen twice. I polished the dining table. I set out the red runner Judith liked and the good plates I only used when I wanted peace to look prettier than it was. Outside, snow kept building along the curb. The whole street looked soft and expensive under white light. Inside, the house smelled warm. Prime rib in the oven. Rolls rising on the counter. Mulled cider on low heat. From the sidewalk, we looked like a family worth envying. Inside, we looked like habit. Daniel stayed on the couch most of the afternoon with a basketball game playing low. Marcy came downstairs late in a cream sweater and new boots, smiling like someone already celebrating something. Judith moved from room to room with the calm authority of a woman inspecting property she had never paid for. At one point, she straightened the candles I had already placed and said, "This house finally feels ready for the next chapter." I looked at her. She smiled into her coffee and did not explain. I remember 3 things from that afternoon with painful clarity. First, there was a white gift box on the entry bench with a pale gold ribbon around it. Marcy kept glancing at it. Judith moved it into the hall closet the second she saw me notice. Second, Daniel signed a Christmas card from both of us without reading what his mother had written inside. He never read. He just signed. It was how he moved through life. Quietly. Conveniently. Without ownership of anything until it benefited him. Third, around 4 o'clock, I walked past the sideboard near the dining room and saw Judith's purse sitting on top of a cream folder. The logo at the corner was dark green. Cedar Pines Senior Living. My name was written across the tab in black marker. I stopped so fast my hand tightened around the stack of napkins I was carrying. Judith came out of the powder room, saw where I was looking, and covered the folder with her purse in one smooth motion. "That is private," she said. "Private for who?" I asked. She gave me that small tight smile she used when she thought a question was beneath her. Then she told me to check the roast before I dried it out. So I went back into my kitchen. I basted the meat. I set the potatoes to boil. I kept moving. But something had shifted. The house did not feel tense yet. It felt prepared. For something I never approved. Dinner started a little after 7. The candles were lit. The roast was carved. Snow tapped softly against the windows while the heat hummed through vents I paid for. Judith sat at the head of the table in dark green velvet. Daniel sat to her right. Marcy sat across from me with that bright waiting look people get when they already know the punchline. I served everyone first. Prime rib. Potatoes. Green beans. Rolls. Nobody thanked me. They just reached for plates and passed dishes like comfort had no owner. For the first 10 minutes, Judith talked about church friends, rising prices, and how family had to think ahead in hard times. Daniel nodded along. Marcy kept smiling into her wine glass. Then Judith tapped her fork against her water glass. Just once. The room went still. She said she had a Christmas announcement. Something practical. Something loving. Something that would keep assets where they belonged. My hand stopped on my napkin. Marcy looked down, pretending surprise too late to be believable. Then Judith said that since Marcy was finally starting over, this house would make the perfect foundation for her next chapter. She said it like the matter had already been discussed, settled, and blessed. Nobody moved. I looked at Daniel. He did not laugh. He did not correct her. He just stared at his plate. That was the first crack. Not Judith speaking. Daniel letting her. I asked one question. "What house are you talking about?" Judith turned to me with calm contempt and said the house her son had carried for years should stay in the family line. Then she added that a daughter was a safer investment than a wife who had failed to give the family a boy. Marcy did not even flinch. Daniel still said nothing. There it was. Small. Clean. Deadly. Not just disrespect. A lie so practiced they had started calling it reality. I set down my fork and looked at my husband. "Are you going to tell her whose name is on the deed?" He rubbed his jaw and muttered that tonight was not the night for details. Details. My mortgage. My deed. My money. My house. Reduced to details. In that moment, I understood. Something worse than insult. They were not testing boundaries anymore. They thought they had already erased them. And Judith was not finished talking. She lifted her glass, smiled at Marcy, and said New Year's would be time to transfer paperwork. That was when the folder on the sideboard stopped feeling suspicious and started feeling connected. She set down her glass and smiled at Marcy like they were cutting a ribbon. Then Judith said New Year's would be the perfect time to handle the transfer. I looked at Daniel. Are you going to correct her? He kept staring at his plate. Elena, do not do this tonight. Do what? Make your mother say my name off a deed she has never seen. Marcy rolled her eyes. You always make everything about paper. I turned to her. Paper decides who owns a house. Family decides who belongs in it, Judith said. No, I said. Records decide. Daniel finally looked up. Why are you making this bigger than it is? Bigger than your mother gifting my house to your sister at my table. Judith folded her hands. Marcy is blood. You are a wife. There is a difference. I felt my throat go tight, but my voice stayed level. The deed is in my name. Say it out loud. Judith did not blink. I am not reading documents on Christmas Eve. If it is so simple, read it. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the county copy of the deed, and set it beside the butter dish. Read line 1, I said. She did not even glance down. Instead, she said I should be grateful her son gave me a home, a family, and 5 years of stability. That lie landed cleaner than an insult. It told me Daniel had let them rehearse this version of me for years. I leaned forward. I bought this house before I married him. I paid every mortgage payment after. I paid for this dinner. So stop talking like I wandered into your life with empty hands. Marcy pushed back her chair. You are being dramatic. No, I said. Dramatic would be me asking why my name is on your Cedar Pines folder. The room went still. Daniel frowned. What folder? Judith answered too fast. That has nothing to do with you. It has my name on it. It has everything to do with me. Marcy stood up now. Mom, just let it go. That was the first honest thing anyone had said all night. I looked at Daniel one last time. Tell your mother to stop using my life like it belongs to her. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Judith rose from her chair and pointed toward the front door. If you want to insult this family, leave. I waited. Daniel said my name softly. That was all. Not a correction. Not a defense. Just my name, offered too late to matter. So I took my coat from the hook, walked out into the snow, and knew 2 things with clarity. My marriage was over. And their free ride was next. I drove 12 minutes through the snow with both hands locked on the wheel and one clean thought in my head. They had been planning around me for a while. Not with me. Around me. I checked into a business hotel off Highway 217 and stood in the room listening to the heater rattle on. No Judith downstairs. No Daniel asking me to calm down so his mother's lie could survive one more day. My phone started lighting up before I even took off my boots. Daniel first. Come back. Then. Mom did not mean it like that. Then. You know how she gets around the holidays. He still thought the problem was her tone. Not the house. Not the transfer. Not the folder with my name on it. I set my phone on the desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up Cedar Pines Senior Living. It was one of those private communities with independent apartments, assisted living suites, and monthly rates high enough to turn aging into a luxury product. Judith had toured places like that all fall and kept calling it research. I clicked residency information. Entrance fee. Financial review. Responsible party paperwork for private billing. My stomach tightened. I went back through my memory of that folder. Cream stuck. My name on the tab. Judith moving too fast when she saw me notice. Her line at dinner about New Year's being the time to transfer paperwork. Not random. Connected. I called my cousin Renee in Portland. She worked in healthcare compliance. I gave her the short version. My house. 5 years of freeloading. Christmas dinner. The Cedar Pines folder with my name on it. Renee did not waste a second. Call Cedar Pines at opening. Ask what has your name on it. Use the words unauthorized financial obligation. Then call a divorce lawyer. Then call the police if your information was used without consent. I wrote every word down. Before bed, I made one mistake. I opened the family group chat. Judith had already moved first. Of course she had. She wrote that I had ruined Christmas, attacked an older woman, and stormed out because I could not stand seeing Marcy finally getting support for her future. One aunt replied that marriage took humility. Another said a wife should never humiliate her husband's family on Christmas Eve. Daniel had not corrected a single word. Social control. Judith always filled the room before fax got there. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all 3. Then I posted one sentence. The house is legally mine, and I am addressing the rest through proper channels. Within 30 seconds, Judith sent me a private text. Do not embarrass this family. I did not answer. By 8:10 the next morning, I was parked outside a coffee shop with a legal pad and enough anger to keep my voice steady. I called Cedar Pines and asked for admissions. A woman named Lori answered. I gave her my name and asked whether there was an open resident file or financial file with that name attached to Judith Hale. There was a pause. May I ask your relationship to the prospective resident? I said, I may have been listed without my consent, and I need to know exactly what was submitted. That changed her tone. She transferred me to a director named Angela. Angela confirmed there was a pending January move-in for Judith Hale. Then she confirmed something worse. A financial responsibility agreement had been signed naming me as the guarantor for Judith's entrance fee and first 3 months of private charges. For a second, all I could hear was milk steaming behind the counter. Then I asked her to repeat it. She did. My full name, my address, my employer, my signature. Not mine. The number attached to the file was not mine either. Angela asked if I had attended the admissions meeting on Monday. I said no. She said the file notes showed Judith arrived with her daughter, Marcy Lane, who confirmed that I knew about the arrangement and would handle the financial side because the family home was being transferred to Marcy anyway. That was the mini payoff I needed. Marcy was not standing nearby while Judith lied. She was in the room helping build the lie. Angela offered to email me the signature page and intake summary. I told her to send everything she could. Then I said the sentence that turned the whole thing. I did not authorize any of it. This is fraud. Angela went quiet for 1 beat. Then she said she needed to loop in compliance and suspend further processing until the documents were reviewed. Suspend. That word sat in my chest like heat finally reaching my hands. I saved the email and called Beaverton Police non-emergency. Identity misuse. Possible forgery. Unauthorized financial obligation. I gave them everything clean and flat. The facility. The pending move-in. The guarantor form. Marcy's role. The officer gave me a report number and told me to email the documents. I did it from the coffee shop before my drink even cooled off. Then I called a divorce attorney. Because I was done pretending this was one bad holiday. Melissa Grant saw me over video at 10:30. I sent her the deed, the purchase date, 5 years of mortgage records, utility payments, the Cedar Pines paperwork, and screenshots from the family chat. She reviewed it fast. Then she gave me 3 sentences I should have heard years earlier. The house is your separate property. Your husband has no ownership claim based on these records. And the women living there are occupants, not people you are required to carry forever. Occupants. That word helped. Melissa told me to file for divorce that day and stop talking to all 3 of them unless it was in writing. She also told me to serve a formal notice to vacate on Judith and Marcy as soon as possible. By noon, I had signed the divorce filing. By 12:30, Melissa's office had drafted the notice to vacate. By 1:15, Cedar Pines Compliance called me back. Angela was on the line with a man from their business office. He said they had reviewed the signature irregularities, my fraud statement, and the police report number. Until the matter was resolved, Judith's January reservation and admission hold were suspended. No move-in date. No unit assignment. No financial approval. There it was. Not revenge. Consequence. Then Daniel called. I answered this time. His first sentence told me everything. Did you really call Cedar Pines? Not what is Cedar Pines doing with your name? Not did my mother use your information? Did you really call? Yes, I said. He exhaled like I had crossed a line instead of finding one. Mom is panicking. Marcy says this was just paperwork to help get Judith settled. I looked down at the intake summary beside my coffee. No, I said. This was paperwork to make me financially responsible without my consent while your mother gave my house to your sister. He got quiet. Then he asked the wrong question. Can we handle this privately? That was layer 2 breaking. Procedural control. Because innocent people ask what happened. Complicit people ask whether records can stay hidden. No, I said. We cannot. Then I hung up. By late afternoon, the story had changed shape. The night before, Judith controlled the dinner table. Now Cedar Pines had a fraud concern. The police had a report number. A lawyer had my file. A divorce case had started. And a formal notice was on its way to the people who thought my restraint was permanent. Force structure. That was layer 3, and it hit harder than any argument. Once structure enters the room, volume stops mattering. And by the next morning, I was ready to walk back to my house with documents in my hand and let theirs speak for themselves. By 9 the next morning, I was back on my street. The snow had turned to gray slush along the curb. The wreath was still on my front door. The porch lights were still on from the night before. From the outside, the house looked peaceful. That was the last lie it was going to tell for them. Melissa had arranged for a process server to meet me there. A Beaverton officer stood by for civil standby. No speeches. No drama. Just structure. Judith opened the door before the second knock. She was wearing a red robe and the same expression she always wore when she thought being offended was a form of power. Daniel stood behind her in yesterday's sweater. Marcy was near the hallway table, phone in hand, already looking angry. The server handed Judith the packet. Divorce filing. Notice to vacate. Proof of ownership attached. She stared at the first page, then looked up at me. You are really doing this the day after Christmas? Yes, I said. Daniel stepped forward. Elena, can we talk first? We had 5 years to talk, I said. You used them to stay quiet. The officer said nothing. He only remained where he was, neutral and visible. That was enough. Judith flipped through the papers too fast to understand them. Then she did what she always did when facts cornered her. She started talking over them. This is Daniel's home too, she said. You cannot throw family out because of one argument. I opened my folder and held out a copy of the deed. Then read page 1. She did not take it. I am not standing here performing for you. You already did that last night, I said. This is the document part. Marcy gave a short laugh that sounded thinner than she wanted. You always hide behind paperwork. No, I said. I correct lies with paperwork. That landed. Judith snatched the deed from my hand like she meant to prove something by doing it hard. Her eyes went down the page. Then slower. Then back to the top again. Owner of record. Elena Brooks. The smile left her face in pieces. Daniel saw it too. I watched the moment the story he had lived inside stopped protecting him. Judith lifted her chin. Fine. The title is in your name. That still does not change the fact that Daniel paid for this house while you played victim. I took out 5 mortgage statements and held them together with one finger. Read the account holder. She would not. Because she already knew. So I put them back in the folder. I did not need to win every point. I only needed the right one. Judith shifted fast. And none of this has anything to do with Cedar Pines. That is my private business. There it was. Not my accusation. Her choice. She brought it into the doorway herself. I took out the compliance email and the intake summary. Cream paper. Green logo. Cedar Pines Senior Living across the top. My name listed as guarantor. My employer listed under responsible party. A signature line filled in by someone who was not me. Marcy stopped breathing normally. You could hear it. I held the first page toward Judith. Then read your private business. She did not want to touch it. That told me enough. But anger always made her careless. She grabbed the page and scanned down too fast. Then she hit the middle paragraph and read it out loud before she realized what she was saying. Admission hold suspended pending fraud review due to unauthorized guarantor information and invalid financial consent. Silence. Real silence. The kind that arrives when a lie falls dead in public. Judith looked up too fast. That is not what this means. I held out the second page. Then read this one too. Marcy said my name sharp and low. Mom. Do not. Too late. Judith looked down again and read the intake summary line that finished her. Family representative present at meeting. Marcy Lane confirmed Elena Brooks would assume financial responsibility for resident charges and entrance obligations. Daniel turned to his sister. You went to the meeting. Marcy started talking fast. Too fast. It was temporary. Mom needed a place. We were going to fix it once the house transferred. There it was. Not a defense. A confession dressed like a plan. Judith tried to cut in, but the damage was done. Daniel looked like someone had just opened a wall and shown him the rot he had been calling home. The officer finally spoke. "Ma'am, if that paperwork was submitted without consent, this is not a private family matter." That was all he said. It was enough. Judith clutched the pages so hard they bent at the corners. "You would take a senior living place away from an older woman right after Christmas." I looked at her. "No. You lost it when you signed me into your bill without my consent." Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. Because there was no version left to hide inside. Just record. Just consequence. Just the truth she had forced herself to read aloud on my porch. Daniel looked at me then, really looked at me. Not like a husband. Not like a man asking for one more chance to avoid discomfort. Like someone finally seeing the cost of his own silence. "Elena," he said. I stopped him with one sentence. "You did not lose me in one night. You trained yourself to think I would stay through anything." Nobody answered that. They could not. Judith had lost Cedar Pines. Marcy had tied her own name to the fraud. Daniel had lost the last story that made his weakness feel harmless. And I was standing in the doorway of my own house, watching the family that pushed me into the snow learn what paper sounds like when it finally speaks. The officer stayed only long enough to note the exchange and confirm that any further issue tied to the house needed to go through formal channels. That was enough. People like Judith do not respect pain. They respect process. Daniel asked if we could go inside and talk. I told him no. Then I walked past all three of them, stepped into my own house, and took exactly what I came for from the hallway table. My mail. My spare keys. The Cedar Pines folder. Nothing else. I did not wander. I did not argue. I did not explain. I picked up what was mine and walked back out. That was the moment Daniel finally looked scared. Not of me. Of a life that was no longer bending around him. Melissa moved fast after that. The divorce filing stood. The notice to vacate stood. Cedar Pines confirmed in writing that Judith's January move-in had been canceled and her file had been locked once the guarantor paperwork was challenged. The unit did not wait for her. By the next afternoon, it was gone. So yes, after throwing me out on Christmas Eve, she lost the place she thought she had secured by using my name. Not because I was cruel. Because she built her plan on consent she never had. Marcy kept texting for 3 days. First, she called it a misunderstanding. Then she blamed pressure. Then she said I was ruining her future over family stress. I answered once. You did not make a mistake. You made a plan. Then I blocked her. Daniel lasted longer. Weak men usually do. They always want one final conversation after silence stops protecting them. He called. He emailed. He left 2 voicemails. Then he sent the sentence that explained our whole marriage. I never thought they would go this far. That was the problem. He never thought. He never checked. He never stopped anything. He let his mother talk like ownership could be inherited through volume. He let his sister treat my labor like household income she did not have to earn. He let me carry the mortgage, the groceries, the repairs, the holidays, and the peace, then acted stunned when I finally refused one more burden. The legal side moved the way real consequences move. Quietly. Step by step. Without needing anyone's permission to feel real. Judith and Marcy left before the process had to go further. Not gracefully. Not gratefully. But they left. I changed the locks that same week. New garage code. New alarm code. New routines. Clean work. Quiet work. Daniel moved into a furnished rental across town. The house stayed with the person who bought it. Me. That was the part none of them could talk around anymore. A month later, I sat alone in my kitchen with the heat running, the yard clear, and no one upstairs rehearsing a lie about who had kept that house standing all those years. At first, it felt strange. Then it felt honest. Then it felt expensive in the best way. Peace is costly when you finally stop financing other people's entitlement. That was the payoff. Not revenge. Relief. Here is what I learned. If someone keeps telling you not to look too closely, look closer. If someone keeps calling your sacrifice family duty, follow the money. If someone needs your silence to keep their version alive, stop protecting them. Some people do not get exposed by anger. They get exposed by paperwork. Trust is cheap when no one has to prove anything. Has anyone in your life ever called it family while spending your money and crossing a line they knew was yours? Tell me in the comments what line finally made you stop. Comment if you would have exposed them too.